in terms of inputs to jumpstart them. More often than not, they learn these skills or trades and they just lie fallow like that. So in recognition of this, we decided to look at it from the angle that, look, why don't we create a platform where we begin to capture them at the time of training. At the time of training, this will encourage them to become serious and they will see a future where they could access resources. That was one leg of it. The second leg of it, we found out that quite a number of school leavers don't even have much to do. So it became obvious that we need to get them to learn skills if they cannot move on to the next level. So that prompted us to setting up a vocational training institute in Ajashe. Of course, it's an international vocational training institute because it's benchmarked against best practices, best features in industry, largely based also on demand assessment to create a curriculum that fits into contemporary areas of development. And these are things that we've already clearly spelled out how they're going to work and how they're going to access funds when the students move out of that institution. We're also working such that sponsorships can also fit into that program, i.e. we have sectors in the oil and gas, we have sectors in marine, we have sectors in civil engineering, mechanical engineering, that want to train people for certain skills that are doable there. We begin to see clustered sponsored groups coming in to take advantage of what we'll have there.
These are very interesting programs, but one of the things that people complain about or we've heard over time is we have very good programs, but the people who really need them, who are those who are residents in the rural area, sometimes they cannot key into it because they don't know about it, or some just have the perspective that it's a man, no man thing when it comes to government programs. So how are you carrying these people along concerning these programs?
Yeah, with any of these programs that we start with, quite a chunk part of our time and resources are committed to advocacy, because we get to reach our people to let them know that they require to have a buy-in into any of these programs we're coming up with. It's been on the strength of that the next levels are developed that takes us to the desired level when we'll be on auto cruise level. But you see, we try to ensure mostly that everything we do is carried on across the 16 local governments. We have structures on ground that's fitting into each of the 16 local governments. We have youth empowerment coordinators whose responsibilities are to collate data on unemployed youths between the ages of 16 and 35 in each of the local governments. And for every levels of openings that come in, we draw people from this list to fit into the areas of vacancies we want to do. So it's not something that's restrictive to the municipalities. It cuts across the 16 local governments. So if you go to if you go to each of the 16 local government headquarters today, you will see that there's an office of the Youth Empowerment Coordinator that maintains the data. There's an office for the liaison officer that keeps a liaison between state government, local government. And also we have a special assistant intergovernmental that maintains a close relationship between the state and the local government. And we have one that maintains between the local government and between the state and the federal government. These are all levels of bridges that have been created to enable people at the grassroots level to access information on practices that are being carried on at the state level. So it never allows anybody to be out of tune with what we are doing.
States have been advised to take advantage of their comparative strength, if I could put it that way. In Kwara, we know it's agriculture, and you have products like rice. And there's been a lot of talk of recent times about the importation of rice when we really have the ability to produce what we have. So what is the government in the state doing to help the federal government reduce the importation of rice into the country?
Yeah, you see, we've always been very interested in driving agriculture because, knowing the fact that we stand at a very vantage position because of River Niger, and of course the soil, supports agriculture very well. We've since recognized this, and this has been the major fulcrum for driving the state economy. We attempted to create commercial farming, which I would say is a huge success in Nigerian context, because we ventured into commercial farming by bringing in sugar farmers, and today The three consortiums have been formed, largely poultry, dairy, and mixed cropping, are getting gradually to their desired levels. And I'm sure the most important part of it, which is the skills we have learned in those areas, is currently being transferred to our local farmers. We have started with a model, because when you're starting something new, you need to start small, because you'll be able to manage the risks at that level. On the strength of that, we've set up a platform that has taken 10 farmers into cooperative groups within each of the 16 local governments. So about 160 farmers. These farmers have now been broken down to support 4 major crops we're starting with: rice, maize, soya, and cassava. They will now be given inputs from what we call an agric mall scheme we have formed. The agric mall scheme is a one-stop shop where we have input providers, i.e. fertilizer, chemicals, seedlings, extension services, and funding, and also equipments for land clearing, equipment for farming will be made available in one-stop shop. So owners of each of these inputs will now have their reps clustered in an environment that will make the farmer access information and services just within one spot shop.
Another initiative of the federal government is the cassava bread, and we know that Kwara State also has a comparative advantage in producing cassava. What do you think about this initiative, and how is Kwara State keying into the initiative generally?
The initiative is very good. Between you and me, it's a good initiative, and I think it's going in the right direction. The only loose end we have, not getting it to the drive in the right impetus that is expected, is, the level of compliance, which requires a little bit of pressure on the policy implementation, because the level of compliance is not as compelling as it should. So the level of commitment to, our input users to source cassava is not as strong as it should be. Because if it becomes very strong, obviously you'll see that backward integration driving itself automatically. And unless we get to that level, because there requires to be some good level of balancing. You can't stop importation when you don't have the capacity to support the gap that's going to be created. So to that extent, there has to be a dual working process, so that whatever it's been lost here is being gained here. If you can work on the lose and gain process, then you'll be able to drive it efficiently. Otherwise, you create a gap, and that gap could be counterproductive. So I think it's in trying to get that to the desired level, where whatever has been lost is being gained from one side. Then that would take us to the desired level when you begin to see the system gradually reducing imports and increasing local production.
Talking to a lot of entrepreneurs in Nigeria, they say the environment is unfriendly, especially when it has to do with multiple taxation. In Kwara State is obviously part of Nigeria. Is there anything the government is doing to make the environment more friendly for them to operate?
Yes, we've had issues of multiple taxations and being made mention of by people, businessmen, especially when we had a forum where we created, an interface between the private sector and the government. There are issues of public taxation, issues that were raised. But by the time I asked the chairman of Board of Internal Revenue to review those issues, they are not actually multiple taxation. Because, you see, when agencies go to collect taxes, a lot more often than not, some people don't know the difference between the federal, the state, and the local governments. And the areas of interface are clearly spelled out. There are no issues where local government collect taxes and state collects the same taxes. Because areas where they are even supposed to collect taxes do not overlap. But more often than not, there are areas of joint tax collection that may come up. For now, we don't have any yet, except one or two pockets of local governments, where states and local governments would agree to jointly collect taxes and agree on a sharing formula. Where those kind of cases happen, I think those are possible areas where sometimes And